This is Tennessee Talks with United States Congressman Tim Burchett.
Hey everybody, I'm Congressman Tim Burchett, and welcome back to Tennessee Talks, and that's the buzzer going off, telling us that we're getting ready to go back into votes. I'm joined today by my good buddy from the Tennessee Congressional Delegation, John Rose. Rose, thanks for being here. Fist bump, obligatory fist bump. John was born in Cookeville, Tennessee. He grew up working on his family farm that's more than 230 years old. I bet you I could do some good metal detecting over there.
Probably so,
If
yeah.
I found anything, I'd split it with you.
Yeah.
As far as you know.
Arrowheads are the thing that are, in abundant supply
You can't
there.
find those in a metal detector, unfortunately. He earned a Bachelor of Science in Agribusiness Economics. Did you call that ag econ? Is that what they call it?
Ag business, yeah,
Okay,
ag business, ag econ.
From Tennessee Tech. He has a Master's of Science in Agriculture Economics from Purdue University and a Juris Doctor from Vanderbilt, or as we like to call it, Vanderbilt. Rose, it's good to have you here with you, brother. Thank you.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Being a sort of a fellow farmer, I mean, you actually do farm. I actually just got a couple of horses, 3 dogs, 2 cats, a wife and a daughter, and a field full of grass. So that's my farm. But anyway, you served as chair of the Tennessee Future Farmers of America Foundation. I was actually a member of FFA when I was at Bearden High School. It's pretty cool. I never did get the purple jacket.
Blue.
Was it blue?
Blue and gold.
It's
National
like a
blue and corn gold.
It's what?
National blue and corn
blue.
gold.
Okay, well, see, I didn't get one, yes, obviously. We'll have to edit that part out. I think it's good that we get young people involved in agriculture. Why would you think that that is a good thing?
Well, so, we live in a country that from its founding and from the settlement, we've enjoyed a bountiful supply of food, and thankfully our farmers are able to feed the people in this country and many of the people around the world, but we shouldn't take that for granted, and it takes well-trained, informed people to produce that food, and so FFA and agricultural education are an important part of making sure that this country is food secure in the future.
I heard Paul Harvey one time, he gave a talk about a guy that was growing up on he grew up on a dairy farm, and the guy was in the Army. He was writing his dad about how he gets up every morning at 5:30 and does his deal, and then he's in bed by 6:30 every night. And he said, "Man, if I'd have known it's going to be like this, I'd have joined a long time ago." It's a farm; it's 24/7, 365. And
we had a dairy farm for many years, and it's a very it keeps you close to home.
Did Dawn ever do much work up there?
She did as a youngster. Now she got away pretty quick.
Yeah,
so.
no, Donna's his sister, dear friend of mine. She was very influential in Nashville and still is with the Farm Bureau. What was it like growing up on a family farm?
Well, so I should note that we didn't live right on the farm, so we lived about 30 miles away in Cookeville, right. So a little bit different experience than a lot of people had. My dad worked for Farm Credit, the Production Credit Association, and so to some degree missed out on that, being right there on the farm every day. We substituted for that by Radonna actually as a young 4-H'er and then FFA'er got sheep, and we raised them in our backyard in Cookeville where we lived, and then we spent our afternoons and weekends and summers on the farm, and so it was a great experience.
That's very uncongressional like you for telling me the truth, correcting me. Usually you would say, "Oh yeah, early, 24/7." I was up there. I was shucking corn or something. Then to appeal to the congressional thing that we all lie, which most of us apparently do, it seems like now lately. The new Farm Bill, I know you're on the Ag Committee, and the Farm Bill is coming up this year. Tell us a little bit about it, why it's important, and will we be able to keep it a clean bill?
Well, I hope so. If you think about ag policy in the United States, you really have to kind of turn the history back to the 1930s. During the 1930s, in the midst of the Great Depression, the U.S. adopted what essentially is known as a cheap food policy. I guess the politicians of that time were concerned about the public, the electorate, if you will, getting riled up because food was not available or was expensive or they couldn't get access to it. And so we put in place farm policies that make sure that we have an inexpensive supply of food. And those policies have been in place since that time. And so what comes with that is then the necessity to have ag policy that makes sure that farmers can survive even though they aren't going to enjoy sometimes the high prices that might come if you kind of left agriculture to the free markets entirely. And so that's why we have these policies that provide a safety net for farmers so that they can get by in the lean times.
You know what my biggest fear is that we drive all the family-owned farms out, and then we're just the corporate farms, the multinational corporations, which control a lot of things now. You know, and I know that the meat processing, we used to call them slaughterhouses. I guess that's not politically correct, but you know, are foreign-owned, and we put these crazy rules and regulations in under the auspices of health, and in reality, all it's done is driven mom and pops out. And now you have foreign control of these commodities that we desperately need, and to me, it's pretty unnerving that we've allowed that to happen.
I think where you see that consolidation that's probably most troubling is in the processing side and the delivery of the finished product to the consumer. The truth is, the vast majority of farms, even the corporate farms, are still family owned. Lots of farms have gotten large, very large by historic standards, but most of them are still actually family owned. Even though they may be a corporation per se, it's still a family owned enterprise. There has been some vertical integration in certain industries, poultry, swine,
vertical
for
integration,
example.
That's one of those words you learned in Vanderbilt, right?
I learned that actually in ag econ. So,
okay. All right.
So you have some industries where the larger corporations have, gained control over production. But even in those spaces, generally, at the farm level, you're dealing with family farmers.
Right, I know them. When you talk about ag econ, I remembered Tommy Burks, who was a real legend in Tennessee politics, and friend of mine, but his wife and I were very close. And I just remember the voice of the farmer sometimes just gets overshadowed. You know, where does milk come from? It comes from Weigel's, from a jug, and that's comes from a dadgum cow, and you have to. And of course, Weigel's owns a big farm, so they were in that business all the way from one end to the other.
Sure. But
I always use them as an example. But I've always admired folks that did that, and we try to, I think, just under the auspices of safety, sometimes we've forgotten, that the human body is a little more resilient than we give it credit for sometimes, I think. So
that's true. Well, you mentioned Bill Weigel and the Weigel's family. They had a dairy, as you've already pointed out, and he grew up milking cows, and they moved into the processing side, and then later transitioned into the convenience store business that they have today. But it's a great family story there. And you mentioned Tommy Burks's. I grew up mowing his mother's lawn. That was one of my summer jobs. And
what was his pig's name? He always used to talk about some hog that he had.
I don't remember that. But he was a great mentor of mine. So
and he was kind of a legend, I guess, at Tech. Is that right?
That's right. He was a future farmer. Got the American Farmer degree when he was in FFA years ago, and his wife Charlotte, who took his place after he tragically was assassinated, is still a great inspiration to people in our community.
Loved Charlotte. Called her Charletta. We were big buddies. She called me Burchett, and I loved her. Still do. You recently went to the World Ag Expo in California. What were the farmers and ranchers talking about mostly there?
Well, a lot of talk about the Farm Bill and the need for certainty from the government. There's enough uncertainty for farmers when you think about markets and you think about the weather and nature and the difficulties that those challenges present. And so the last thing we need to do is for the government to be injecting more uncertainty into agriculture. The interesting thing about the World Ag Expo, it was held in the Central Valley, the southern end of the Central Valley of California, the San Joaquin Valley, some people call it. And it's one of the most diverse areas in the country for agricultural production, really a breadbasket for this country, a wide array of different products and commodities and food products, everything from fruits to nuts.
I was going to say fruit. I knew that it was big in the fruits and the nuts, and because I've been following the drought situation over there and how we've record snowfall, record rainfall, but yet just the gallons and gallons upon gallons that were flowing out into the ocean because of some environmental witchcraft, more or less, environmental rules that are really for no rhyme or reason.
That's right, and we heard a lot about that during our time there, a lot about the various federal programs and what needs to be done to provide an opportunity for farmers to continue to be able to be profitable. What's happened with ag policy is that we got very used to, I guess it's true across the economy, to having stable prices in this country. And this runaway inflation that the last 2 years we've seen during the Biden administration, that's been spawned by runaway government spending, has presented a real challenge. It presents a real challenge to farmers, and the farm programs were all fashioned 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, with no thought to runaway inflation like we have right now. And so that's something we're going to have to address in the 2023 Farm Bill.
Yeah, I hope that it's very specific on those things. I hope that, because the complaint I've always heard about the Farm Bill was they try to put too much in it that maybe didn't have agriculture applications, and I would hope, at least that's one of the things I talked to Kevin McCarthy about, because as you know, in the Tennessee legislature from your tenure being in the ag man there in Tennessee, that bills have to be very clean in Tennessee when they're passed, and I like that. I like that everybody's up here saying, well, Burchett will be here all night voting. Well, dadgummit, let's be here all night. I don't want to vote for something that has unintended consequences because it was 1,000 pages long, and some knucklehead was telling me, trust me, Burchett, it's good. I don't need that. I know you're on the House Financial Services Committee, but you're also the vice chair of the Financial Services Committee on Oversight Investigations. What kind of priorities do y'all have this year?
Well, so one of the things that we've seen over the last 4 years, Tim, while we've both been here, is that there's been very little, and particularly since the President Biden came into office, very little oversight of the administration. So we have financial services regulators, folks like the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Treasury, the Comptroller of the Currency, that we're supposed to be providing oversight to them, but our predecessors, the Democratic majority, were not providing that oversight. They were not allowing the committee to function as it's supposed to. And so, for example, tomorrow we'll have the Fed chairman before the committee and be able to ask some of the tough questions. The Fed chairman, I think he would even admit at this point, he missed this swell in inflation. And some of us 2 years ago were kind of screaming, hey, we're going to have inflation if we keep spending all this money.
This dadgum money. It just doesn't make any sense to me that we're having to look at that now when everybody was just, what in the world are we doing?
Yeah, and it was no mystery. Even former Democratic Treasury Secretary Larry Summers said, if you do this, you're going to have runaway inflation. And, as if he was just queuing it up, it came on just like he expected, like many of us expected. And so the Fed chairman has some questions to answer on that front.
Well, switching gears a little bit, I know your boy, was it Guy that had his feet worked on?
That's right. So
now, how is he doing?
He is doing great.
He had some surgery.
He's got a tough recovery period. He had some pretty serious surgery on his feet, and that went well last Thursday, and so he's got 3 or 4 days under his belt now. He's going to have casts on for the next 6 weeks and can't put any weight on those feet. And
he's an active little boy.
He is. So you can imagine, as 5 years old, having to sit in a wheelchair for the next 6 weeks.
I can't imagine it at 58. 5 years, dude. Well,
he's not quite as heavy as you, so he's a little easier to pick up.
I'll pray for him
around.
And his mama.
Yeah, you should do that.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
All right. Well, here's the part of the show that I hate, but our guests seem to enjoy the most. Where you get to ask me any question you'd like. And of course, if I don't like it, I'll edit it out and then just act like you never asked me that question, Rose. But go ahead.
Well, so you have a perspective I don't have, and that is that you served in the Tennessee General Assembly for a number of years, both in the House and the Senate in Tennessee before you came to the U.S. House of Representatives. From my observation, Tennessee does it a lot better than we do it here. And I wonder if you could just talk about the
Yeah.
differences and how that ends up serving the people of Tennessee better, that we have a legislature that actually debates bills and
Yeah.
and really considers the issues
Yeah.
that come before them.
Well, that's the reason I voted for Kevin McCarthy. I went to him and I said, hey, this is what we do in Tennessee. And really about almost 90% of what I asked him to do, he's done. We have it's called a caption bill. If the bill starts out dealing with dog catchers, well, dadgummit, it has to be dog catchers. You can't put a big raise in it. And he's followed that. And he's, fiscal notes, we know how much stuff costs. We're not any surprises in that regard. And things like that. So, that's, and I dig that, because that's what the public demands. They're tired of these 2,000-page bills that we get dropped on our lap the day of, or a couple hours out. You and I both came up here at the same time. I think the first big spending bill was just that. It was a huge spending bill, and there's no way in the world we could have read that thing or found out what was in it. And that's by design. It protects people, and I get it, but we just don't need that anymore. And we're changing that. And I think shame on the Senate for not following suit, really. But there's the buzzer. I know we got to go vote. I just got a text. I'm sure that's what they're telling us. But anyway, John, I wanted to thank you, buddy. You've been a good friend, your wife, and you've got two wonderful, beautiful, beautiful kids, and you're a very fortunate man. You've been a friend of mine for a while, and I'm glad to still say you are a friend of mine. And I appreciate you being on the show. And I'm Congressman Tim Burchett, and I just want to thank you all for watching another episode of Tennessee Talks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Tennessee Talks. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Keep up with Congressman Burchett by following Rep. Tim Burchett on Twitter and Instagram, and Congressman Tim Burchett on Facebook and YouTube.